Hello friends, this is Kate and I'm in my studio today and I am working on a little journal. A woman asked me to make something special for her mother and she gave me the different color schemes and things like that she was interested in, and so I've been working on this journal this week. Now let me show you what I've already finished. I started off with the cover. Some of you may remember this. And it says, "Love you, Mom." It's going to be for Mother's Day, but she's not seeing her mom until next week. So it'll be a little after the fact. We started off with this really pretty doily. Her mom said that she said her mother likes pinks, blues, and purples. So this was the perfect cover. And it'll fold around, and on the back pocket, I added this embroidery. And I'm probably going to stitch this down so that she can slide some things in here, but it doesn't flop around quite so much. Then on the other side, which will form kind of the end papers, we have this piece, and then we have another pocket. I may end up adding on a piece of lace on this side. In fact, I think I probably am going to do that. Might be something more opaque like this, or maybe even something, could be like, I could do a little strap down the center where someone can tuck things across. Because I do like seeing this. So some people in the journaling world would call that a belly band. So I may add that running down, and then you can tuck papers across. So that's kind of what I'm thinking of that. Okay, the next page I am in love with. All right, first I have here an old quilt. And from this, I have created two pockets. One has a little lace. One is this pocket with a little bit of circular slow stitching. Then this was an iron-on transfer embroidery that I did recently. I got these iron-on transfers at an estate auction, or as just an estate sale, and I loved this little butterfly with the flower. Ironed it on. First time I've ever done this. It was so fun. And so I just put it on a little piece of white sheeting. Then I did my own thing with the colors. And, you know, this is an outline. I filled it in, so made it my own. But I love how it just sets off that one corner. And then I added a little extra of this quilt to make a pocket. Now that's going to fold around, of course, and look at the inside. Oh my goodness, it is so much color and texture. So for this one, I'm just letting this be. I did some thread painting on this wonderful piece of vintage fabric, and oh my goodness, you guys, lots of French knots, some little long and short stitches, and some lazy daisy stitches there. Then I had done a little bit of slow stitching on a piece of quilt, and I love it. So I put that here. It's in the same color scheme, but it just breaks it up and it makes it kind of interesting. So that's a pocket here. And you know, I just cut it out that way, kind of went with the curl in the, you know, this curve. And I like that it softens that. Anyway, I'm loving this page. I thought that would be the center, and it still may be, but now I'm working on the third page. And what I'm finding is in my fabric journals, having 3 spreads that provide us with this many pages seems to fit really well. And it's such a nice size to hold in your hand. So that's the size that we're going to go. So I've got one more page to stitch. So I started off really simply with just this white little dinner napkin. It's in okay condition, has some spots, but I'm good with that. You know, we like our things to have a story. And on the back, I am doing some layers of fabric. So I had just this random kind of weird shaped piece of this coffee kind of mocha colored fabric, and I love this stitched edge, so I put that there. And I think that in order to bring it one more little row down, I'm just going to add some lace here. And I'll show you what I'm going to do with this, and then I'm going to decide on what lace to use. So this is going to be a pocket all the way across. And I think this is now my centerfold. Isn't it beautiful? It's just the end of a table runner. And I love this delicate lace on here. I think I'm going to let this hang down a bit, and I might even trim off these corners and give the whole thing a rounded shape. So I could just leave it there and just leave the brown. Might do that. But I could also add in a piece of, because it has a curve and I just don't want my felt to show through. And I kind of want to protect this because it is going to be a pocket. So, you know, I don't want this to get torn up. So I was thinking, okay, what could I put here to just make a plain piece of fabric? All right, could go with some kind of pretty fabric like this, but it is going to get hidden, you know, so I don't know about that. I really like those fabrics and I want them to be seen. I could go with a wider lace, might do that. That's kind of cool. I could go with a really plain piece of fabric. In fact, I could go with more of the quilt. I have more of this quilt that I got off of a very threadbare quilt. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, I could throw in a piece of that. Or I could go with something really simple. I have this, it's just a linen, a muslin. I got it at a remnant store. And I could just lay a piece of this in. I might do that because I have quite a bit of this kind of fabric lying around. And I don't really want to use something that, because it's going to get covered up. Okay, so if I'm doing that, I'm just going to lay this out. I don't mind the raw edge. And in fact, I kind of want, let's see, this edge has a little bit of some interest. Let's see, what edge is this? That has like a cleaner edge. It might work better with what I'm putting on top of it. Let's see. Okay, so if I go with that, let me trim off this little piece. My studio is an absolute chaos of embroidery floss right now. I don't know what happened. Well, I do know what happened. I got quite a bit of embroidery floss at a couple of estate sales for an incredible deal, but and so that is, oh, it's in a bag. I haven't sorted it yet. And then I don't know, this has been in and then it got entangled in a pincushion. Okay, tell me that I'm not the only one this happens to. You have a bunch of things out and then they start to merge. That is what is happening. So, you know, don't feel bad about yourself. If your stuff is a little crazy, yeah, you're among friends. Okay, so anyway, back to cutting this fabric. Now, could I get out my mat and do, you know, measure? Yes, I could definitely do that. I don't know that I want to do that. Oh, you know what I'm going to do, you guys? I'm going to lay this in so it goes all the way up, and then that's going to lay over. That's it. That's what I'm going to do because that looks really pretty. Okay, now, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a little snip there because that's where it goes to. I'm going to make a little snip on this side. And then, yes, I'm going to tear this fabric. One tear. And there's my little piece. Now, if you would prefer to cut that out, cut it out. It's perfect. You know, you can do that. But if you're working with a fabric like this that is going to tear really easily, you know, why not do that? I like a raw edge. I really do. Now, as you can see here, it's fraying a little bit. That doesn't bother me. I'm going to tuck that under here and it'll be just fine. Now, I do have my little mini iron. I don't know where I got it. On Amazon or maybe at Target or something. But anyway, I like having that right here next to me because it makes it really easy to just touch something up. Okay, I'm going to lay that in so that that's going to cover that whole page. And now we're going to stitch that down there. Okay, and you know, it's not perfectly matched up, but it's pretty close. There we go. If you ever want to, you can always fold something over an unfinished edge or just let it dangle. And I do that sometimes if I want to. Okay, that's where we are. Now I'm going to rest for a minute. Well, not rest, but you know what? This is rest. Anyone else? Pulling the needle through the cloth? Yeah, that's very restful. I was stitching along, and I was watching this show, New to Me show, that I had just discovered on YouTube, which is, it's a British show where people go to antique stores and they're given, well, there's two versions. One is there's celebrities and they are given a certain amount of money and they try to buy things at antique stores, and then they go to an auction and they try to turn a profit, and then they donate it to charity. I love that. You know, that's just really fun. So I have been really enjoying it. I think it's called Antique Roadshow. No, Antique Road Trip. That's right. Antique Roadshow is the one where they tell you what things are worth, which, does anyone else love that show? I 100% love that show. I think it is amazing. Yeah, but anyway, because I'm really into finding things lately. It is just, you know, if you are like me, and I bet you are, some of you, you love going to estate sales and you're looking for fabric, you're looking for linen, maybe some embroidery floss. You know, I mean, I hope that when I am gone, if my kids or grandkids don't enjoy doing sewing or embroidery, that they, you know, that they're able to find people who do, who can take all my stuff and make use of it. You know, there's stuff that should never be thrown away, and this is some of it. So I go off hither and yon and look for cool little estate sales and buy up, you know, the regular, the vintage linens, this stuff, and random fabric, and old quilts, and whatever else I can find. Oh, and an increasingly ridiculous number of pieces of vintage jewelry, little whatnots that I can put on my bags, and journals. So, where was I? Oh yeah. So, because I've been really into this lately, I'm very much drawn to shows where other people are also scouring the countryside in search of antiques. I think I could do that full time. Now, I will tell you, I have no desire to run some sort of shop because, I don't know, I like to be out doing things. But I do love finding little treasures. And I am going to show you on another video, probably my next video, some things I discovered at a recent antiques little estate sale. You are not going to believe what I found. I will leave that as a teaser, and I hope you will watch my next video. If you haven't yet, go subscribe, would you please? I'm slowly building my group of people who watch, and, you know, it's a couple here or there. So, you know, if you've got stitchy friends, please share. So anyway, I have really been enjoying watching this. And I was doing that earlier, but then I thought, you know, I really want to bring you all on this project with me because I've almost got there. I've been working on this fabric journal for days and days, and I am getting close to the end. That thread painting on the middle page definitely took a long time. And you know, it's funny because this kind of thread painting, it's something where you could do all of it. You could even just do a couple pieces of it. What I ended up doing was a lot of the centers of the flowers in French knots and then giving some texture to a few of these other things. But I didn't do all of it, you know. So it's so fun because with something like that, you could take it with you, and however much you get done, that can be it. It's just adding a little bit of detail. It's not necessarily about covering the entire print with thread. Or at least that's my opinion. There's lots of ways to do it. Now, of course, there are some where I do cover the entire thing. For example, on this. I did thread paint all of the area that was painted over, or, you know, this tea towel that had a flower. I did all of that with the thread because that was the style I was going for there. So, many ways to do this. Okay, I gotta make sure that I'm staying pretty even. Now, could I pin this down? Yes, 100%. If you have watched any of my other videos, another option is you could glue it down. But this is a pretty simple little piece, and I can always trim off the edge on this if I needed to later. So I'm not really worried about it. So how are you doing? I hope that you are working on something fun, or that you're being entertained while you get something else done. Both totally valid options. Sometimes I watch my stitching friends while I am working on editing photos or something like that. Sometimes I don't, because I'm like, man, I want to be stitching. So I wait until I could also be stitching. There's something about watching people stitch while you're working that you're like, So, but I hope you're doing something fun. I had such a lovely evening last night. A young lady that we know, she from our church, but also just from life. Like, she danced with my daughter when they were younger and all kinds of stuff. She got married last night, and oh my goodness, the wedding was so, so beautiful. It was up at a farm, and this farm actually has all kinds of animals. They have zebras and other things, like, very cool. But we were not looking at the zebras. We were attending the amazing wedding. So that was really fun. And you know, it was beautiful. We were all worried because it was supposed to rain, and we've been having a lot of thunderstorms lately, but it didn't rain. It didn't rain at all. And it was gorgeous, and it was so beautiful. They got married overlooking some rolling hills with this big tree. It was so pretty, and the bride was gorgeous. She looked so beautiful, and the groom was handsome, and all the bridesmaids, and they had some of the bride's young siblings and nieces and nephews be a ring bearer and a flower girl, but they also had the grandmothers be flower grandmas, and it was so sweet. And they walked down the aisle in their matching dresses with flower crowns, and they threw rose petals on to the people who were in the audience, and it was just fantastic. We all had the best time. So it was a lot of friends, and you know, there's something about celebrating milestones with friends. My daughter's about to graduate. I cannot believe that. And so many of these same friends will be coming to her graduation party. But we were very excited to celebrate Sydney and her husband and just mark these life moments together. Pretty cool. All right, I'm going to comment here 2 things. One, yes, that knot is in the middle of everything. Why? Because this is going to be completely covered by another piece of fabric. So, you know, and also, is it getting wonky? Yeah, it is. And my stitches are not even. It's because I'm just trying to stitch down this little bit of fleece that I have in between to give it some weight. So when I make these pages, I like to have, there's a front page, a back piece of fabric, and then I will often, if it's not a heavy fabric like this quilt, you know, this didn't need anything in between, but this little pieces of cotton, I do like to put another layer in between. And generally it's going to be maybe a very thin fleece, or it could be, you know, some of you guys stitch into maybe a wool blanket. That's a great choice. It could be a lot of different things. Okay, I've definitely gone a little wonky, but again, I'm just going to kind of pull that up, and I'll end up trimming off some of the parts I don't need. I'm not pulling hard on it because I don't want it to be misshapen, but it's fabric. It's forgiving. So I'm just going to run my thread up. I really am only stitching 2 layers here on the side. The fleece is not cut quite as big as the page. It could be either way. Okay, we've gotten that basic thing there. Now, could I stitch that down? For sure, I could. I'm not sure if I'm going to at this point. I'm just going to finish this off. A little knot. Okay. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is, now I just pressed this down, this pocket, and I have 2 options here. I can go like this and just have the square end at the bottom, or I could go like this and have the squared off edge at the top. I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm also going to flip it over and see where I'm at with the length. Yeah, okay, so I've got a lot more fabric on the bottom. Now, a couple options. I could fold that over, or I could just wait and see if I need to trim it off later, because I might end up putting something along this on the bottom. In fact, I probably will. So we'll just kind of see where we are. Okay, so for now, I'm just going to lay this so that the edge comes about to the edge on the back, which is just beyond where this line of stitches is. That will be perfect. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just kind of press this down. Why? I don't know. It just makes it feel like it's sticking better. Okay. And now I'm going to stitch just my pocket down. Now, obviously, not going to stitch across the top. That's my pocket. You know, but these are the things that we need to tell ourselves when you're in the middle of working. You're like, oh wait, don't stitch that part. Don't stitch it closed. All right. Now, I could also fold this over and just see what that looks like on the other side. I don't mind that. If I stitch that over on both sides. I kind of like that. It gives a little bit neater, and I feel like it just is going to secure it a little bit better. All right, I'm going to go ahead and do that. So starting off, I'm just going to run my thread through the back. The knot will be inside there. And I'm just going to go straight through all the fabrics. So I'm securing it to this piece, and also I'm stitching the back to itself so that it kind of makes this neat little line. I might as well, since it's just a little bit longer than the page that I wanted to make. I am probably going to end up covering it. I might on the other side, because I'm not totally sure what I'm going to put on the other side. I really like these projects because you build one page at a time. And, you know, if I go out to an estate sale and I find some lovely little piece that I just love, I can put it right on a project I'm working on, you know, if it's in the same color scheme. And, you know, you start looking for stuff and then you start seeing all the things that are in the colors that you're working on, because that's where your brain is. So I have now, I mean, with these linens, I often find things in this color palette, but this one is definitely a little different. And I love this too because it has this cross stitching on it here. I mean, this is a fantastic piece. I really love it. And this journal is going to be really special because I am using several really cool pieces on it. The lady who commissioned me to make this for her mom owns the antique store where I have a booth. And I just thought, oh, that's really cool. So yeah, I wanted to make her something really special. Okay. As long as this is even with this, that's all I care about. I'm not worried about the bottom edge right now because I'm going to end up trimming that off. The only reason I put it there was to create that inside fabric. Now, for this part, I'm just stitching it slightly under the edge of this lace. I do not mind if my stitches show. I always like stitches showing most of the time. But, you know, if they blend in, that's also fine. And I'm not going to stitch through this lace just because I kind of like it floppy there at the bottom. It's pretty. Sometimes I do stitch lace down. If I want it to not get caught on something, then I will stitch it down. But with this particular placement at the bottom there, I'm not worried about that. And this is going to be my centerfold, so definitely not worrying about it getting caught as much on things. So today is Mother's Day here in the US. I am recording this late on a Sunday afternoon, and my sweet daughter made me waffles this morning. She said, I know you don't usually eat breakfast, but would you like waffles? And I'm like, yeah, if somebody's gonna make me waffles, I will not turn that down. So they were lovely. And Sundays are always, you know, a lot for our family because my husband's the pastor and I'm the music director. So it's a busy morning. So I got a couple waffles before I headed off. And then we had a great morning. Love our people. And then we had some lunch for my sweet mother-in-law. She's has dementia, and so she's not able to sit still for a super long time. But we had some sandwiches, and Lily went out and got cupcakes, and Mom really enjoyed her cupcakes. So in between, I sat with her on the sofa, and we'll go through her photo album of I have her wedding album for safekeeping, and so we looked at those photos, and that was very precious. And she told me who was in some of the photos. You know, it's a different season, but it's still very precious. So that's where we are. But my family, my kids and my husband and I are going to go out to dinner in a little bit. So that will be fun too. Feeling loved, feeling grateful. All right. I am charging along with this. As you can tell here, these are not super, super close together. They are just some even little stitches, really basic, that I'm just getting this secured. You know, and obviously this is not meant to hold something that's really heavy or anything like that. A couple little mementos or some index cards with some writing on them, maybe a letter. That will be the perfect contents for this. Okay, I don't want to get my thread too short where it then is a pain. So what I'm going to do here is just run it back down under the pocket through this material, not back up, but just like knot it into here, and that'll finish it off. There's lots of ways you could do that, but that's how I like to do it, is just with a little knot. Also got these at a recent sale. Pretty cool. Okay, I'm going to re-knot this, and I'll be back. All right, so I had a little pause there, and I am back. And I did put this on, and I have added a little bit to this side because I've decided to not use this as the center piece. The reason is I just really love this. I love how colorful it is. So that's going to be my centerfold with its one pocket here. I don't think I'm even going to put any other pocket here. I just love the texture. So that means that this other piece is going to fold around, which I'm happy with. But it also meant it was not quite long enough, which, I mean, that's okay. It doesn't have to be. But anytime your fabric doesn't quite go long enough, we can always add to it. And so I've already added this one piece of lace to this side. And then on the inside, I'm going to go ahead and add another piece here. I looked at lace. I have a lot of different lace I could use. Like that would be pretty there. But I kind of like this. It's just off of, I think, a garment. I picked it up at an estate sale in somebody's sewing things. It was just the hem. Actually, it was circular, so it was off of something, maybe a dress. But I've taken this little piece, and I kind of like that because I can blend it in a little bit. So that's a possibility. What am I going to do with this? Okay, so this will be, again, it'll be around the centerpiece. Well, I definitely wanted to add a pocket. And so what I did was I took another piece of this quilt and I've made a little pocket, and then I appliqued this little flower. Now, this flower, I just stitched on a piece of sheeting. Now, this is the thing. If you ever want to just have a little sewing project going with you, you can always just applique or stitch on a piece that's not on whatever is going to be your final piece. In this case, I just had it on a piece of white fabric. And then when it came time to put it on a project, I cut it off and then I added it on to this, which will make a wonderful little pocket. I think I'm actually going to do this side up because it has that finished edge up there. I don't mind that it has an unfinished edge around the other sides, but so I'm going to put that on that side. And then the question is whether I want to make another pocket on this side. Well, probably I do. If you know me, you know I love my pockets. But let's just think before we do that. Now notice this is not going to be, visible across, right? There's going to be something in the middle. So they can be quite different. One option would be do something like this. I do love a doily against a plain white backdrop. This already has a little bit of design on it that's kind of pretty. This was wrapped around from the other side. So let's think about this. What are some other things we could do? I found this I love. I think I'm going to use it on a larger piece. Look at that. It's a crocheted little basket. It is crying out to maybe be used on a pillow and filled with flowers, right? Okay, so we're not going to use that on this project. What are some other things we could put over here? Well, I could put an assortment of some little pink doilies over here. That's possible. I could use just a little bit of this, and then it could have just a very shallow pocket at the bottom, but then leave this visible. I do kind of like that. So that's a possibility. I do have some other embroideries, but again, I want to leave that. I like that little detail. It's really pretty. Okay, so maybe we'll just add that. Now another option is I could run that up both sides. I could have this along the bottom to provide a little place for a pocket. And then I could run another piece and bring that out. I kind of like that visually. It just provides a border, and then we've got this little detail in here. I like that. If I wanted to add a dash of color, I could do a little collection of Suffolk puffs up in the corner. That's kind of pretty. What else do I have? These are some cuties. Let's see. I have a bowl that has all kinds of random Suffolk puffs in it. I do remember her saying that her mom liked pinks, greens, That's purple. It's maybe a little too vibrant for the other colors. These are matching. What if I just did that in the corner and then it comes down with this white detail? That's kind of sweet. I like that. Let's see. Do I have any other colors? I think that's all I have. Yeah, I kind of like that. All right, we'll think about that for a minute. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and I think I'll add on this lace first. I'm going to go ahead and run this across the bottom, and then I'm going to do this over. All right, so I'm going to come in here, and again, all the other pieces are stitched together. I want this to be wide enough to really cover all of the other side of that lace. It'll be long enough to make it a little bit longer so it fits going around that other piece. Okay, so this does not need to be perfect. The only thing is to double check and make sure that the lace is facing the right way up. Sometimes it's hard to tell, but sometimes it does make a difference. Well, it probably always makes a difference, but sometimes it's really unclear which side is which. When I'm stitching lace on, I want to make sure that I catch it over some of the sturdier parts of the lace. So I'm following some of these lines that are a bit bigger. The other thing is I could go in the middle of some of these flowers. I'm stitching with a white thread. You could choose white, off-white, anything like that. Now, I've got to remember, I was stitching through the whole thing. I'm actually going to stop myself because I don't want I don't want some big threads going across that. So let me start. I'll just cut them out of this side. So I don't really want that there. So what I can do instead, and what I intended to do, is just to run this under one layer of the fabric. It doesn't need to go all the way through to the other side. It's not really as structural. So when I come through here, I can just catch under here and then run it here. And I can make sure that my finger is behind this so that I know it's not poking through. Okay, so back to business here. Just going to attach that on, run it under. Now I want to make sure it goes under this fabric, otherwise it's not going to attach it. May need to turn this around so I can see it a little better. Now I'm going to always be matching this up, making sure it's going far enough down. I like this because it's providing a lot of fun texture, but because it's all in the same color family, it doesn't add a ton of visual, it doesn't take up as much visual space. So anytime you can have, you've got white, slightly off-white, those sorts of things, it makes it interesting without getting too busy, I guess. The other thing is that because there is a lot going on some of the pages, I think it's nice visually to have some pages that are a little calmer on the color scheme. Of course, I chose my centerfold to be that wonderfully colorful page. And so having another page that's really simple, I think it works well. It's the same reason you want to have margins on your page when you have a book. You got to have some white space around. And margin's important, whether it's visually or in life, your calendar, right? I have learned not to always schedule to the very edges. All right. So this just, again, it's just going to be sewn down, and it's just a detail. I'm not even really making it a pocket. I just want it to be pretty. Not every page in a journal has to have a pocket on it. I do put journal pages on most, or pockets on most of the journal pages, but some of them can just be pretty. That is okay. As I mentioned, on one of the other pages, I'm thinking of putting just a little belly band, and that might be something to do on this page too. I'll have to think about that. Because a belly band, it goes across it, and then you can just tuck things under it. All right. To finish her off, I'm just going to bring this through, and then I will knot it off between the layers. Make sure that you don't pull it too tight. You don't want it to gather up. And as long as you've just run a straight stitch, even if it does sort of gather, you can always pull it so that it's no longer gathered. So make sure it's how I want it before I finish it off. Perfect. Okay, and then we're going to add another piece of lace to the edge. And again, I just want to make it a little bit longer because it's going to wrap around the center. When I'm making these journals, I often find that I want to leave even the bigger page, the outside page, for the end sometimes, because you might have to add a little bit more on. You know, and let's just check. So this is going to be the cover, which isn't totally finished yet. Okay, that's the cover. This is going to be the next page. And then this page will be the inside. Isn't that coming together so pretty? Okay, but when this folds over, that's fine on the front. I think that looks really good. This will be all right where it is. This will be all right where it is. Yep. How that lays in there. Actually, I'm going to pull a little bit more so that it lays around the front a little bit better. And then this page come like that. It can be pretty even. Okay, and then that means that I've got remaining this page like that. I already added some lace there. So that's the one where now if I add more lace here, when it's folded around, the edge of that page is going to cover what's visible there. And then this one, we'll leave that for a moment, but I may end up putting another inch or so, maybe more, of fabric on the edge. That happens almost every time because I don't know how thick it's going to be until it's finished, because it just builds as I go. Right? All right, so that's the page that gets a little more lace here. Yep. This page is pretty good to go. This I love. And then we're going to add this pocket onto that page. So actually, isn't that fun how it coordinates with this quilt? A little bit more quilt there. And I can experiment. I could do it there. I don't have the finished edge on top. I kind of like it here because I've got that finished edge there, and also I kind of like how the pink goes across. I might even tuck it under that page. We'll see. Okay, and then that will be there. And this will be here. Well, I wanted to come back because I have finished this Mother's Day journal and I wanted to show you how it all came together. And it definitely has a few additions since I last showed it to you. We start off with the cover. I did add a little pin here, this little vintage pin. And I added a couple of additional embroideries here. Then I'm just gonna unpin. And you could put a button closure, you could do a lot of things. Pins are simple though. So this is full of different looks, and I love how it turned out. In the inside pocket, you might remember it had a really bright fabric. It's still in there, but I just felt like once I got this really pretty coffee colored fabric and this more muted needle point here with the cross stitch, it just wanted something a little calmer on the facing page. So still have my happy color in there, but I went with something still bright, but with a little bit more, you know, just kind of a muted background. Then we have this beautiful pocket with this vintage cross stitch. The next page features some quilt, and it has this beautiful pocket that has a vintage design here. And then the applique flower is on another little quilted pocket. We have the centerpiece, which is so bright and I just love with all this texture. And then another pocket that is a slow stitched little quilted piece. Breaks up the color, but it has the same colors in it, which I kind of love. And then we have some lace just to offset that, kind of frame it. On this page, some bright colors, lace. You could use this as an additional little pocket, and then we have this. And then you might remember, I didn't want to cover this design, so what I did, I have this little drawstring I got from some jewelry, and I just stitched this little drawstring bag on right on here. And I sewed it down so that it doesn't interfere with the drawstring. But there you go. Little bag that you can still put things in. Other than that, it doesn't have a pocket on there. But I love incorporating a little separate bag onto a page. Then we have this, where the other part of this wrapped around. We've got this. And I added some lace just to bring the page out a little bit more. I added this little place to store a pen so that somebody can have their writing utensil right there. We've got another little pocket, and I did stitch down this edge so that things won't fall out. I added my little purple satin ribbon here, and so it looks really pretty from the back. The focus is on this. I don't have it attached there. I attached it on the inside there. And then you've got your beautiful back. I did add some lace to be able to extend that page out just a little bit. I am really happy with how this turned out. And I told my friend that her book is ready and she's so excited. So I can't wait to show it to her. And I hope that you enjoyed seeing it come together. Thanks again for joining me. And I hope that you're having fun being creative. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.